Hey, Candace.
What's
What's up?
up?
Just talking with the folks in here, just making sure that they're aware of what we're doing today and
Yeah,
here. Hey, how are you doing over there?
I'm doing good. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about this conversation and kicking off this series for Mental Health Awareness
Yes.
Month and this intersection.
Yes.
I'm just excited. I can't wait to just really dive into this conversation with both
Yes.
you and Dr. TK. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Candace, how have you been over there? So you're in the. I'm in New York, of course. New
Yeah.
York representing here. Where exactly
So
are you? Let's tell the people where
so
you.
I am in the DMV area.
All right.
So I'm doing good.
All
I'm
right.
doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. We have these Knicks. We just took down the Boston 2 days ago. We have one more to go. Well, one more, so that we'll be 2-0. So just my fingers are crossed and just kind of watching the game. But more importantly, just really excited about this conversation, Candice. As you know,
Yeah.
this is something that comes up often. You know how important it is for mental health. For folks that are into entertainment, but who's actually taking those steps to actually really drive those services. And I'm just so excited to be able to join this kind of a journey along with you, someone as amazing as you, a world-renowned
Likewise.
speaker and licensed mental health professional. You just, everywhere you go, you just are very infectious. And, I see how you work with the folks on set. I see how you just work with people that's around
Yeah.
you. And so, all those things, it also filters through me as well. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And it's so important, especially in what you said earlier. A lot
Mhm.
of people are talking about it,
Yeah,
right? The need for mental health support on set,
Mhm.
but then also before you even get on set, right? In
Absolutely.
pre-production, post-production, because
Mhm.
I always say people see lights, camera, action, and they have no clue what is happening behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And just like all of us, no matter what industry that, we work in, we're human beings first. And in the
Absolutely.
entertainment industry, you're human beings that happen to be dope actors, that happen to be amazing producers,
Mhm.
talent managers, and the crew, right? That's making it
Absolutely.
happen behind the scenes. And you bring who you are into whatever
Mhm.
space you enter into. So if you have some things going on in your personal life, when you're
Yeah.
on set those 12, 16 hours a day, you're carrying that.
Mm.
And what do you do when things are happening in real time
Right.
on set? And you're
Mhm.
still thinking about and ruminating over things that are not on set that you're still bringing with you psychologically. So to have, mental health support in
Mhm.
real time, it just helps you breathe a little easier. It helps you to exhale, inhale and exhale so that you can do your job while staying well. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So I know Dr. TK is in here, and I saw an invite.
Yes.
I don't know where it went. That's the power of technology nowadays. If you're not up on it every single day, you lose it. So I'm just scrolling down here to see if I can re-find it.
Okay.
Dr. TK, I may ask you if you can go out and come back in and re-request if we can't find it on our own. But I also want to acknowledge some of the other folks in here. Who's this? Well with Waddle. She's from Virginia. Dr. TK is from LA. We
Yes.
see Nicole Baskin
Atlanta.
from the ATL. What's up, Nicole?
Yes.
Yeah, Nicole's another very vital part of our team.
Yes.
We're out here just kind of carving out this way, and can't wait to get everything going. Okay, here you go. Here comes Dr. TK. She just gave me another request. Thank you so much for working with me here. But yeah, man, this is what it's about. And not only is it in the New York, hey, Dr. TK, what's
Hello.
going on?
How are you, Mike?
What's up, Deuce?
Hey.
How you
Colorado is
doing?
in the building.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Hey, Dr. TK, can I do it like a formal introduction? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, could I do have your bio here. I just want
Okay.
can I say your full name? Because I've been calling you Dr. TK all this
That's
time.
cool.
So we have the Takesha Jackson Rudd. Dr. TK is a licensed clinical psychologist, therapist, business coach, and college professor for over 18 years, with over 18 years of experience. She specializes in private practice growth, scalable income streams, clinical supervision, and mental health program development with a passion for culture diversity. Yes, yes, yes. She works with the at-risk youth and the reentry population while also serving as an APA CE. instructor. Dr. TK helps therapists create abundance in their businesses. Yes, yes, yes. We'll continue to talk to you as well. Offering coaching and mentorship to professionals across the United States and abroad. She has managed a successful group practice and is dedicated to empowering others through training, mentoring, and speaking engagements. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Dr. TK.
Hey, hey.
Yes.
How are you
How are
doing?
y'all? I'm good in California. You know, it's early over here. It's like 6:10. So
Can I say California? Is that
yes,
right?
please,
Yeah.
please do because we got our sunshine back today. It's about to hit that 100-degree weather this
Oh,
weekend.
wow.
So
Wow,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
wow.
Well, we're on our way. We're working our way up there. New York's a little behind the ball game, but we'll be there in time.
yeah.
Yeah. So no, thank you so much for joining us. As you know, it's mental health awareness month, and it's very important as a company that serves both of these industries,
Mhm.
entertainment and mental wellness, that we get an opportunity to really, lock in and talk about some of these things that are important to us and some of the folks that are utilizing our services, and just so that people are aware of what are some of the tools and strategies that they can use along the way, just to help them with their mental wellness and help them carry along, whether it be in the entertainment business, whether it be in business, as you can relate to as well, or in anything. So we have a few questions for you. I just excited to have you here. So
I love our
Candace, I don't
conversations.
know if you want, yeah, for sure, for sure. um so let's just
Yes.
jump in. Candace,
Let's jump in.
you wanna jump in and get it going?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So one of the things that Wink knows about me is that I'm a researcher. And when I was researching this intersection, in a lot of studies were showing that those that's in the entertainment industry or just creators in general are twice as likely than the general population to endure like depression and anxiety, substance abuse. And when you think about those statistics, what do you believe is different in these unique industries than the general population that the mental health challenges are higher?
Mm,
Yeah. So some of it actually comes from the panel that you did at the Millennial Social Worker Conference in
Hmm.
Atlanta, because
mm,
that one was more recent. And I pay attention to the room when either other people are speaking as well. And I
Yeah.
noticed that it was like dead quiet. And when it's quiet and people aren't even taking notes, I think they're more intrigued with like a wow effect. And one thing in particular, I can't remember exactly, it was a few people who said it on the stage, including some of the people in the industry that came on stage, was
Hmm.
that when you embrace and take on the role of the character, it seems like that really stood out. I know it stood out for
Yes.
when you take on and embrace the role of the character, even if you think you know or believe that you have a handle on the emotions that might get triggered, because you may have to tap into some emotions as you go into your role, is that it's more important as well what happens when they go off stage.
Hmm.
And what tends to happen, along with the conversations that you were talking about as well, you and Wink, is that sometimes if there's no like your company that exists
mm,
on stage, these people go home, they're
Yeah.
expected to go to sleep, pick back up in the morning, go back to work, or go back to their regular life with kids and family. And the problem is, if they're dealing with a lot personally before they even hit the
mm,
set, and then they go
Hmm.
onto the set, and then they have to infuse themselves into a character. And I mean, we can go down the gamut,
mm,
especially with Black
Yeah.
actors, of what type of positions they're in certain roles.
Hmm.
A lot of that can trigger, as you had all mentioned on the stage that day, certain things that you may be going through personally, even in that moment,
mhm.
like grief and loss, for
Hmm.
example, that you haven't even had a chance to process, but you
Yes.
may have signed a contract and accepted this role that you start this week, and it's a funeral on Saturday. That's how close it can
Close.
get. And I think it's vitally important. And that's why I was very intrigued and went up to y'all afterward, because it is very much missing that when people leave studios, I'm going to even add in this day and age podcasts, because people kind of overlook
Mhm.
when people open
Yes.
up on a
That's good.
podcast
Hmm.
that they walk off and there's no follow up, there's no follow through, there's no questions, and then they don't even
Hmm.
know what to do.
Right.
So they just go back to what they think is regular life. But what we call that in mental health is like, now you're carrying around this
Extra
extra
bag.
bag that you probably didn't ask
Yep.
for.
Mhm.
And the
Hmm.
problem is nobody has been able to like put the Pandora's box lid back on the box. And it reminds me of like working at a school where we open up these kids, don't close them back down, and then they're expected to go back to third period. Like, that's unrealistic for somebody to be
Hmm.
healthy.
Right.
Yeah. And I love that you even talked about that because I know some actors, they use the container method where they open the container up and take what they need from it in their personal lives
Mm,
to be more authentic to the character. And then they put it back and they close the lid. And I also say, you have to know how to utilize that method because you have to make sure that's what's in that jar you've healed from, because sometimes we utilize things that we haven't healed from. And Wink had showed it earlier. Michael B. Jordan, he got trapped in the character of Killmonger, right? And this was after how many movies he's done before Black Panther, and then he got to this particular role because there were similarities between his personal life
mm,
in this role that he got stuck in. And the mind is one of the most powerful parts of our being, and it's also the most fragile.
mm.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Good points. Good points. My question is going to I'm going to take you into this question here. You know, how can those who are working in a high pressure environment like the entertainment industry recognize the signs of burnout before it becomes overwhelming? So, like, what are some of those
Mhm.
indicators that you might see beforehand so you can probably catch it and prevent it prior to it like getting out of hand?
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer that in two different
Okay.
levels. And
Okay.
so one of them I actually heard from Gary Vee, and I was like, oh, I'm taking this.
All right.
So he had talked about being in the online space or being in the public eye. And he said a lot of people in these days, like the word burnout is kind of just being thrown around like
Yeah.
candy.
Yeah.
And the issue with that is there is a difference between like continuous micro
Yeah.
burnout and then macro
Mm,
burnout. And
Mm.
unfortunately, some people don't recognize that they're burnt out until they get to the macro level because then everything shuts down, like your body keeps score. But the truth is, most of us, if we're navigating through this economy, through this life, and this is not even including in the industry, we're just talking about life in general,
Right.
mhm,
at least in the United States, is that people are going through micro burnouts every single day because life and the world looks very different than what it looked like even 2 years ago, right?
right.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's that. I like that variation of it. Then when I think about just like red signs, I go back to old school. The way we used to learn psychology is a little different than now.
Okay.
And so we used to use like a point scale because everybody knows. Every time I do this mental health workshop, I always ask people, "What do you remember about the grading scale in school?" And I talk to
Mhm,
Yeah.
people who are in reentry, and half of them didn't finish. I mean, the sixth grade. You know what I'm saying? But
mhm,
they know what 100% is. They
mhm,
know what an F is. And so I say, okay, anything 70 or above is technically functional. It don't mean you're perfect, but it
mhm,
just means that you can navigate through life.
Mhm.
You might have some issues, and we usually in mental health look at three different areas. So if somebody's burnt out, I would just ask them to look at and rate themselves, at least on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe not out of 100. And if
Mhm.
you can score 7 or above, you may still need help, but you
mhm,
okay. You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
If you're 60 or below, you're close to either shutting down or you're like already there. Okay.
mhm,
So we look at in the three areas of mental health, like your, we call it impairments, but like
mhm,
any obstacles or big blocks in school performance. For people in the industry, it would be their creative space, their ability to brainstorm, their ability to remember their lines, their memory. That's whatever has to do with their work, right?
mhm,
Yeah.
And then also you have, which is a big one, the relationship component. And the relationship is like two
Mm-hmm.
levels. It's the romantic relationship, like your partner, your marriage, but then and your children as well. But then it's also like your friends. Are you isolated? So if somebody in the industry, for example, before they took on a role, I would ask them to compare. Like,
mhm,
were you going out? And let's just say now you're staying
Mm-hmm.
at home. There's a difference of like I choose to stay at home in this season of my life because I have my party season and I'm just
mhm.
good. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right,
Versus I'm staying
right.
inside because I feel like something is
Missing.
missing. I feel like something's lacking
Mhm.
and maybe I can't even put my finger on it. And that's typically a telltale sign when they
Mm,
can't even tell me why they're being different.
right.
I'm actually more concerned that they can't describe it,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know? And so,
Yeah. I actually
You
like
go ahead, Wink.
real quick, I love the idea of what you was in terms of defining that baseline. Where were you prior to, the thing that's affecting you, and how far away from it are you?
mhm,
I think that's a very good way to go about it. I appreciate that.
yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Ken.
And speaking
Mhm,
of, that reminds me to ask you the question about advocacy,
mhm,
right? Advocating for yourself while you are in this industry can be scary for a lot of people, right?
Mhm.
Because this is such a unique industry where your livelihood is on the line. And if you have conflicts with a producer or director, they can replace you just like that. So talk to us about self-care routines that people in the industry can have to take care of themselves while being in the industry where you're in the spotlight, you're under constant criticism and scrutiny, but then also how to advocate for yourself and knowing that there's a difference between aggression and assertiveness.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, oh, the different communication styles, my favorite.
Yes,
So I'm actually
because
thinking
that's
about a,
important.
yeah, I like to tell information based off case studies. So I'm thinking about like a gentleman right now that I had him on my caseload for probably about 2 years or so. And it's interesting because the initial referral was not even through him, it was through a partner. And then
Mm-hmm.
as things, unveiled, he ended up being in counseling probably longer than the other person. And that's pretty normal, because most Black men may not really do a full assessment or desire to do so. And sometimes it takes that pull of the other partner for things to just like open up. And so I remember when he had to, I'm gonna say, go out of town, because I'm gonna speak to the provider and the client in this example. I was his advocate in the moment because this was a person who sought out services after it was presented. Like he was okay with it. And I noticed that there was like some anger, concerns, and issues with personal that started to flow over with his ability to show up in the workspace, to be able to concentrate and focus and go out for the role, because there was conflict over here. So if there's trust and issues over here, if you follow with couples issues, it might be a little difficult for this person to go out and do their job effectively and like leave
Yeah.
the home, go out of town, all those great things. So they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I remember in particular, he was more concerned about, all my clients know I'm super ethical about a book. When it comes down to you crossing state lines, it is a conversation that we need to have from provider to client of how long are you going to be gone? We've done some great work together. Do you know around and about what your schedule is going to be like? But I know you can't guarantee it. And what I loved about what he did, which is now I'm talking to the actor or so, is he was good enough in counseling to know that it benefited him to the point where he told me, I don't want to go on the road for a couple of weeks and not have my session. And that even spoke growth about where he was versus I just check you in 2 months.
Self-awareness.
Right. So,
Yeah.
right. And so we talked about the longevity of when he will be gone. And his thing wasn't an issue on the clinical side for therapists because we technically can't cross state lines. He was literally going back and forth within like 4 weeks. So it wasn't a big deal. And for providers who are concerned about that, you would just consult with your board. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But I got enough information from him to see that I can also, if there was an issue, I can advocate and say, he's not moving. He's on a job, just like a remote worker would these days, working on Wi-Fi. He's just doing his job. I can't say what job he was doing. And they were okay with it. And he actually kept his sessions. It actually helped him stay grounded in between the sets. Sometimes he would be in a trailer doing phone therapy because telehealth wasn't popping back then. But he made sure at all costs that he kept his sessions because he saw the connection of how he needed to stay grounded to even return back home to then go back home from acting. So it was so multi-tiered. But for me, with people who like go out of state or travel, you want to set the tone before they start doing that. I think it honestly would be a little harder if somebody is constantly going back and forth, because as a provider in the beginning, we want to build a relationship. We want to build a rapport. However, we do have telehealth now.
Yeah.
So what was difficult 5 years ago to my therapists who are watching is no longer difficult now because there are no excuses as to why you can't see somebody. And that's to the client as well. Team, no excuses. If you got Wi-Fi, you got a phone, you got headphones, you got somewhere privately you can talk, private is the key, then there are no excuses as to why you got to skip your session unless you're on set.
Absolutely.
So having that plan in place, and what I'm hearing you say is being proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
Being proactive rather than reactive. So for those that need support while they're on set, for those actors, producers, directors that are watching, what would you say to them as it pertains to while they are on set and caring for themselves in high-paced environment?
Yeah.
Mm,
So this is where I look at like basic anger management skills. When I say anger, it can be replaced with anxiety, it can be replaced with sadness, it can just
mm,
be replaced with any emotion that you don't want to have.
mm,
And
Hmm.
I look at groundedness, I look at, activities like mindfulness, people who are spiritual prey. And so when someone's ever at a peak, like people need to know their threshold, and that's a conversation within itself because
Mm.
all of our peaks for
Know your
even anger
threshold.
are different,
Hmm.
right? All of us have a different stress tolerance, right? So what's really important is that that person first understand what is their tolerance level based on whatever concern or issue they're presenting with, right?
Hmm.
So I would let them know, hey, if your tolerance level is at a 7, you have a high tolerance for pain in this
mm,
area.
mm,
However, I need you to start recognizing when you're at a 4, when you're at a 5. And so if we're working together before that situation happens, of course, I would take them backward and ask them, when are times or what is something that happened as recently that you may have rated it at a 4? Like, what did that look like? Because I need them to have an ideal picture
Hmm.
because it may not be the same in the
mm,
future, right?
mm,
So the goal would be, let's just say my client, for example, was out and for 2 weeks I couldn't talk to him. So if that was the case, I would say, okay, do you know what kind of, like the preventative, do you know what kind of environment you're going to be in? Do you know if you're
Hmm.
going to have a trailer by yourself? Do you know if you get at an 8 or 9, can you remove yourself? Is there somebody on set that you feel like you can tell something to so that they can
Same
give you a little
person.
time out and you can remove
mhm,
yourself?
mm.
But it's very important that you remove yourself so that you can de-escalate faster with less distractions. And what's most important, I use
Mm.
this in couples counseling, you
Mm,
got to communicate with at least one person and let them know, I need 15 minutes. Give me 15 minutes. And if you give me 15 minutes with no distractions, don't knock on my door, don't do nothing, I
mm,
will come back. But if I'm
mm.
interrupted,
Mm.
it may disrupt me and then I may need an
So
hour. And
set
so,
your boundaries.
so we got to create that structure, that container. And I always tell any client I'm working with, find one person you're around that you feel like you can
Mm.
trust to tell something to so they can advocate for you if also you need to remove yourself.
And I love
Mm,
how you just said that, because that's important, especially for those that are aspiring to be in this industry as a professional, like a production therapist, because those are the ground rules you set, day one when you come on
mm,
set. And being able to identify, to your point, that one person, being able to know your threshold, being able to implement boundaries, right? Being able to put language on what it is that you're experiencing and not suffering in
mm,
silence, right? And sometimes, you could be on set for 36 days and you're suffering in silence for the first 30 days. And then you get to that 31st day and everything explodes and people are like, wait, what just happened here?
mm,
You've been holding that in. So these skills are just so good and so important, because if you use them coming
mm,
in, again, you are being preventative over a lot of different conflicts internally and then also externally, because you're working with a lot of people and you're on a time clock. So you have to get these, things done, but making sure that you're well in the process. So I love how you said, just find that one person. Find that one person. I love that.
yeah, love it, love it. I just want to, just kind of jumping in and thank a few people for hopping in. Great conversation. We're talking about the power of pause. We're talking about mental health for creatives. We have Dr. TK here, Candace Washington, Wink Woodall. Wanted to make sure that you guys knew what we're talking about. Also, make sure you're following us. If you're coming in from Candace's or Dr. TK, we are the Production Wellness House, and we would love for you to join us. We're asking Dr. TK a lot of questions that are helping out a lot of creatives that are, tapping in, trying to figure out, hey, how do I keep my mental health grounded as I'm moving through my process? We all understand this volatile business. There's a lot of ups and downs, ins and outs, yeses and no's. So,
Mm.
you have to figure out how am I holding on to myself? How do I keep myself motivated? How do I keep myself moving forward? And a major part of that is maintaining your mental health. I'm gonna, Dr. TK, if you don't mind, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm actually gonna tie it to one of the things that I know that you do frequently, which is working with like smaller businesses and stuff like that. You know, um, actors are often told, "Hey, you are a business. Present yourself as a business. You're an
Mhm.
independent contractor. You have to build yourself out. You have to do all these different things to, keep yourself in the enterprising space. And so my question to you is, for creatives that are out there, what are some of the tips that or suggestions that you would offer that could help them manage their, I guess, their financial growth and potentially help them not be as stressed throughout the process? Like, are there some preliminary things that they can do to try to help manage some of that financial stress? Because, it is an up and down slope. I watch
Oh
it.
Yes,
yeah.
for sure.
Look,
Many would argue that a lot of it is on the lower
yeah.
end, more often than the higher end, and so the
Right.
question is how do we manage through that side when it comes to finances and stuff
Well,
like
I'm gonna look at like finances and stress like combined because clearly they
that?
can trigger one another. Like if my clients are watching, they're probably gonna laugh. But I'm like, first we need to do a time audit, right? So a time audit, like for an entrepreneur, is just you need to understand where your time is going. And so
Mhm.
I
Mm.
have two levels of a time audit. That's basically you take the next 7 days and you just write down or put on a spreadsheet where your time is going.
Mhm.
Now, for someone who has a lot of stuff going on, even offset or outside of work,
Mhm.
I would even up the ante, the second level, and do a
Mhm.
time audit for your whole life. So,
Mhm.
like from the
Mm.
time you wake up to the time you go to bed, like what is happening? Because if, let's just say, one of these creators even came to counseling, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't do this, but let's just say they wanted to, and we did a time audit, I would say, wow, like you spent 3 hours, you know what I'm saying, like doing this. And I'm not trying to be a business coach. I'm trying to figure out like what happened in those 3 hours,
Yeah.
because what I may realize is that they couldn't stay focused. They stressed out. They got distracted,
Yeah.
like all of these things. But then that would just give me more information to talk
Yeah.
more. Another thing that time audit also helps our clients see, even as mental health providers, is that they are doing things they have no business doing. It is not in your scope of practice. You are not a mathematician. You did not go to school for CPA. You didn't go to business for entity structure. And these things can cause stress.
Right.
And when you're stressed out, you can't even make more money, which causes a cash flow problem. It's like a cyclone around here.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so things that we typically, even for like beginner or like cash flow up and down entrepreneurs, we tell them at minimum, you should always be consulting with somebody on a money team. And I'm not just talking about just like your tax person that you hit up at the end of the year.
Mhm.
I'm talking about at minimum, anybody who got like any type of money over $1,000, at least quarterly. Sit
Mhm.
down and work with someone about how you can set up your life. A lot of us work from home now. Even if it's a creative, they may be doing a lot of stuff in their home. I'm not a financial fiduciary, but I know tax write-offs when I see it. And sometimes, again, these things can cause stress because, as you could imagine, money, this is another rule, money is going into your business. And then money should be going also into your personal from your business, meaning you pay yourself. And what can cause low-key a mental health breakdown
Yeah.
is getting your
Yeah.
taxes done and finding out that you are simply commingling money. You don't
Mhm.
know how to run your business. Why? Because maybe you have pride, you didn't want to get help. Maybe you didn't want people to really look at your real finances beyond your business and ask questions that would make you feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And this is how it crosses over to mental health, because like I may not be able to look at your books, but I can talk about why is it that your pride is so high, whether it's culturally, if you're a man or a woman or a single parent,
Yeah.
whatever. What is it about your identity that you created? Nobody gave it to
Mm.
you, that you created,
Right.
that makes you not want to learn how to trust other people to let them in. And to me, just as a culture, this is why we stay on the bottom, because we don't want to share, because we
Mhm.
always think somebody's scheming. And not everybody's a scheme. People are actually out there to help you, but you can do it based off word of mouth. Go to somebody who's working with someone and ask them for a proper referral,
Right.
but let somebody into your world so
Mhm.
that you can actually make more money, because now you're not worried about the money.
Absolutely. Mhm. Thank
I
you. Thank you.
love that. I love that. And I love how you talked about identity because Wink, before he asked you that question, he was talking about rejection, right? And in this space, a lot of creatives, they are accustomed to the word no, right? Um, what advice would you give someone in staying grounded, staying anchored, staying motivated while not losing the passion to dream,
Mm-hmm.
but to keep going in an industry where you do hear know a lot. And you're, especially in this social media world, you're seeing everyone's shows get picked up, and you see people getting callbacks, and
Mm,
you're still, doing your self tapes and sending in the auditions and writing your scripts. So for many people, that's how depression can sneak in. That's how, anxiety can show up. You talked about isolation. That's how people, go into their bubbles. So talk to us a little bit as it pertains to how do you stay motivated?
Mm-hmm.
mm,
So I always start with the end goal in mind. I'm not going to say I was not always this way. I've always been a person where I've looked at the end goal, and then I say I reverse engineer it and look at what are the things that I need to do to get there. And so, to the creative, coming from a Black woman from Compton that went to
mm,
school in Compton, I am very used to the word no.
mm,
And what tends to happen is people have like a double level of no. You have probably a lot of no's from your personal upbringing, and
mm,
then a stack
Yeah.
on top of that. And, people try to negate the history, but we can't escape our baggage. And
yeah.
then on top of that, you choose an industry in which you may be given no a lot just for the sake of the industry, but also potentially due to cultural differences and, things like that. And so, an easy way to say it is keep your eye on a prize, but that is easier said
Mm,
than done. I do believe that people need to surround themselves around tools and people that are constantly pouring into them
Mhm.
and not like draining them. That includes parents, that includes caregivers, family
Yeah.
members, adult children, old school friends. Some people are not in good company based on where you are choosing
indeed.
to go. So one of the things that I tell even like business owners is it doesn't mean you have to like neglect your old friendship circles. They have a reason and they have a purpose. Unless they're harming you,
Mm,
you can still hang out with them.
yeah.
But you want to start hanging around with people like your circles of influence. You want to start hanging around people that are thinking like the person who you want to become.
Yeah.
And I'll use the
Mm.
example of something that I told people, and it did not feel good to do it. During the pandemic, like the first couple of weeks, I had teenagers, and
Mm,
the mindset of the teenager that was about to go to prom and it got snatched away from them, poor little hearts,
mm,
right? Is they were
mm,
like, is it going to get better? And I
mm,
learned this from a college professor because she worked at Hurricane Katrina. Because this is all trauma, what we're talking about. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so she said the worst thing that you can do for anyone is know that it's not okay and you tell them it's going to be okay.
mm,
Right. And so when everybody was in the dome, she heard all these other mental health workers saying it's going to be okay. And she, used some foul language and she was like, no, it's not. I'm not about to sugarcoat it to you. The journey is going to be hard. But
mm,
if
Mm.
this is the life that you want, then you need to stay focused there. I encourage you, if you want therapy, find a therapist who can entertain you from where you want to go versus just only keeping you in your baggage. Baggage is important
mhm,
to clear, but I need you to also stay focused on the future. So I start telling all my clients, pain is temporary.
yeah.
It's just that one person's pain may be 3 rejections.
Mm,
Somebody's pain may be 10
mm,
rejections. But what do
mm,
we learn even in business? You might get 9
mhm.
no's before you get 1 yes.
Yes.
And
Yes,
even
yes.
the yes may come with 10 more no's, but at least
Mm,
you can reflect on what you have to do to even get the yes, that you stayed the course. And the last thing I'll share, like that I can just tell clients of all ages is, people will say, I'm tired, I'm ready to throw in the towel. And
Yeah.
adults, I'm like, tell me about a time that you thought it was going to be over for you.
mm,
You feel me? And
mm.
they'll be like, what? And I'm like, tell me about a time, like you said in your
Right,
intake, that it was going to be over for you. And they'll tell me, and I said, but you're here. You
right.
thought that was going to
Mm.
take you out? And they like, huh.
Mm,
So the little light bulb goes off. And I
absolutely.
said, so this is no different. It's just a different situation.
I love it.
Ah,
You said
it's a different
so.
situation.
Yeah, you unpacked so much there. I want to just touch on at least two of them. Know what you're getting into, right? And understand, set your own expectations based
Yeah.
on what you're getting into. Be aware of that, right? That was one thing. You had mentioned something else too about the end goal in mind, keeping the end goal in mind. And that's I love that because that's definitely a space that when I'm talking to clients, when I'm talking to folks that are checking in, it's take a look at the end goal, but then also do the work to get there. You got a lot of people who just focus on that end goal. It's like, oh, I want that. Oh, I'm
And then
gonna
they're
be
not
there
doing
one
the
day.
work.
Yes.
Uh,
Say that again.
and it's like, take those steps, because that
Yeah.
process is going to get you there. Take the steps to get there. And sometimes during that process, you might learn that, hey, that's what I wanted. But as I was taking these steps through through my process, I saw certain places that I might be able to detour that can also help me get there. But I can also benefit from this space as well, you know. And then in
Mhm.
those spaces you have other opportunities for investments and other ways to kind of set up other streams for yourself to get income along the way, so it's not so stressful. So thank you for those points. That was so important to hear you say that, because it's so important to dream, it's so important to set your goals,
Yeah.
um, but it's just as important to take those steps and work hard to get there,
Mhm.
you know. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just,
Oh,
because
go ahead.
people,
Go
there
ahead.
were some
Go
questions
ahead.
here, and I just want to make sure that someone said Dr. TK is amazing. Yes, yes, we know.
Yes, she
That's
is.
why she's the first one to come in with us.
Yes.
We had someone else ask, how do we become a set therapist? Yes, so we will be offering courses, modules. What you
Hmm.
can do is go to our website, and there's a form for you to fill out. Give us your information and we'll be in contact with you. The website is theproductionwellnesshouse.com. Just that simple. Yes, and so we're here with Dr. TK. We're talking about the very important topic, the power of the purpose. I'm sorry, the power of
Pause.
pause. I'm sorry. Power of pause. Mental health for the creatives. Dr. TK, Candice Washington, myself, Wink Woodall, and we're just asking her some amazing questions. She's giving us a lot of insight as to what we can share with you guys for tips. We're gonna ask like one or two more questions, and then we're gonna open up the floor for you to ask questions, Dr. TK, if you're okay with that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
All right. If you're
Oh no, I
interested,
do, because I want the people who are watching to understand and know
there you
what
go.
y'all do, because they
Mhm.
weren't
There
there
you
with us.
go. Candice, did you want to ask your next question or?
So the other question I have is, what advice would you give industry leaders, right?
Mm,
Those directors, those producers, those executive producers, in creating a culture that prioritizes mental
Yeah.
health and wellness, right? Wink mentioned it earlier. A lot of times in this industry, you see the creatives as business, right? But being able to really prioritize their psychosocial emotional needs in the creative process, like what advice would you give the industry leaders in creating healthier sets?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is something I actually do in consulting, and also something that I learned attending like a trauma training.
Mm-hmm.
Is I first learned about it during the trauma training, and it was by happenstance. I happened to be there, and I noticed that someone was saying how beneficial it was to finally go to a training to learn about how to do something in their work and not have the supervisors in the same room.
mm,
They
Right.
split the room, and pretty much the executives, for example, the administrators, they had a training on the exact same topic, but the creatives or the employees had their separate training so that they can actually be open, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was one key. The second thing that I do in consulting, more so with administrators and executives of agencies, for example, which would be the executives you're referring to,
Mm-hmm.
is before we expect for them to advocate for services, we also want to make sure that they have an understanding of what mental health actually is and what it looks like as it pertains to, for example, 2025,
Yeah.
what it looks like on set. It doesn't mean that they have to know diagnostic criteria and all those things, but it
Right.
wouldn't hurt to be educated on basic terminology.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if I'm talking to them, I may say, does anyone know the signs of depression? Because the only time we look at the signs is when somebody posted because something bad didn't happen.
mm,
Yes.
But can you notice the signs before we're looking at a tragedy? And some people may say the typical what they see on a commercial with all these diagnoses. But at the end of the day, everybody shows up different. So somebody may
Mm-hmm.
show up and look angry while the other person shows up and looks overly happy.
mm,
But it's not their norm. Somebody is talkative while somebody is quiet. And so I would say for those execs, what I would want to do, like for them or somebody, is put them in a room together without the creatives,
Mm-hmm.
and
Separate them.
yeah, and provide them with first some psychoeducation, and even just to find out what they know, to
Mm-hmm.
bust some myths about what is mental health,
Yeah.
and really to equip them so that they don't feel like they're operating out of their scope either, because that can feel uncomfortable too. Is
Mm-hmm.
like we do this with ministries, is the ministry in churches, they'll say, those who are open to mental health, they'll say, I need to know when to draw the line,
mm,
because not all this stuff can be prayed off, Dr. TK.
Yeah.
And so
mm,
they want to have a conversation. I've done trainings with ministry, same thing, administrative without the congregation,
mm,
to talk about at what point do you do a proper handoff. And it doesn't mean that they counsel,
Mm-hmm.
It just means that they know how to build referrals. So these executives, once they go through maybe even just like one training or something like that, that I always say agencies should have an in-house referral system. And let's just say if all of us are working in one agency, let's just say if Wink, you're working with somebody, Candace, you're working with somebody, I'm working with somebody, and we all come up with 3 different referral therapist sites, whatever, that we want to refer our clients to. There should be something on set, whether it's online or in a physical folder, where we're sharing resources. That way, if the
Rolodex.
4th person comes in, they don't feel like they're starting from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the worst thing that can happen is to refer somebody for counseling and then we can't find them a therapist. So that's what I would say, because I come from a training perspective and psychoeducational perspective. And some people just don't know, which is why they don't make referrals.
Yeah, and that's good. You have to be able to educate because that brings about awareness. So the directors, the producers, they know what to look for. I remember I was speaking to an executive producer out in LA, and she was sharing with me, Candace, I have to be the therapist on set. I have to be X, Y, and Z on set because I have to make sure that my cast and crew are okay. And that's not the norm, though. I love that she said that, but I also understand that that is not the norm. And really, she immersed herself in education around mental health, right? Took some basic classes like, like mental health first aid, just to have understanding because of the content of the show.
Yep.
Right? Because the content of the show dealt with a lot of mental health themes, she wanted to make sure that those that were portraying was being authentic, but they wasn't losing themselves or their identity behind these characters. And when you get gems like that in the industry, you're like, okay, someone gets it, someone understands it. But the industry as a whole, that's why, we founded the Production Wellness House to really bring the psychoeducation, to bring the mental health support on set. But then also, you talked about having a proper hands-off because us as production therapists and those again that are aspiring to be, this is not clinical work.
Yeah.
This is transferability. You taking your skills and being able to coach someone through to educate them. And sometimes it's the education that saves lives to get them to the help that they need, right? So having that mental health support to really say, hey, during this scene, I'm going to need to pull this person aside to give them that 15-minute break before we go to the next scene. Because again, confidentiality, I know what's happening in her life that is associated. So that's where that advocacy comes into play. So I love that you even talked about the education, because sometimes it's just that you just don't have a full understanding. You don't know. So if you're educated around this, then in the meetings, in the table reads, you're asking the right questions,
Yeah,
right?
preventative,
And then
as
that's
you mentioned earlier.
creative.
Yeah, be preventative
Yes.
versus waiting for something to happen and
Waiting.
then we want to fix the rest of the set. Like that
No.
shouldn't happen.
Yeah. So it's being proactive so you don't have to do that, damage control.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Good questions, good answers. Dr. TK, do you have any questions you want to
I
ask?
actually wanted y'all to dive deeper in what Candace just started talking about.
Okay.
And so I know this question came up 1,000 times at the
It did.
Atlanta event, but not
It did.
everybody's there. And so can you talk about the difference between how you show up on set compared to maybe, because they heard the word therapist, so they're probably like, oh, I want to be a referral. And I want you to talk about like from the consulting perspective versus the therapy perspective,
Right, very good.
so that they can understand the difference of what happens actually on set.
Yeah. So when it comes to the role of a production therapist, one Wink coined that. I remember I was working on a film for BT, and we were talking around what do we coin this role, because having licensed mental health professionals isn't new in the industry. It just hasn't been standardized yet, right? It's an option. So when you think about that title first, production therapist, it's employing having licensed mental health professionals on set, and we cannot disregard who we are as a psychologist, as a psychotherapist, as a counselor. That's who you are in nature. It's being able to transfer transfer the skills that you know clinically into an environment in a non-clinical way, that if a mental health crisis happens while you're on set, you know how to respond to get them the proper care. But while you're on set, a lot of the work that I do is around education, is around consulting, is around coaching. All of those things are non-clinical. We're not assessing, we're not diagnosing, we're not treating. We're helping those that are on set, cast and crew, giving them those wellness strategies, giving them the education to be well while they're on set. Boundary settings, right? Communication styles, how you communicate to each other. It really does matter. Giving even advocacy, right? Advocating for yourself while you're in this environment, to be able to go to, like you said, at least one person, even if that's the producer, building that rapport. But it's really having someone there to create this space of safety, to create this space of compassion and empathy, and to advocate for the talent, the actors, but then also to advocate for the crew members. So sometimes in between scenes, I'll do wellness checks just to check in, just to see how are you doing after witnessing that scene. It can be the cameraman shooting the same traumatic scene over and over and over again, and that can have an impact on him. Hey, do you just need to go take a walk, right? Before you have to pick up the camera again. Those consulting, education. So when you think about it from pre-production and even post-production, one of the things that I do in pre-production is I break down the scripts, right? Reading the scripts and pulling out different mental health themes, and then asking the questions. You talked about that earlier. Asking the questions. I did a film that had to do a lot with grief. Asking the questions, what's your relationship like with grief? Right? How do you see grief? How does grief show up for you? So I know when we get on set, okay, I know that these group of people are okay. I'm still going to check in with them, but I know that this cast member, this crew, they struggle, right? And when they show up, they're going to show up as the actor that they are. They're going to show up as the director that they are. But I know there's a human being behind that role that I have to just check in with. But if I determine that they need, and this goes back to our profession, if I determine they need a higher level of care, my job is not to be their therapist in a clinical aspect on set. My job is to know, hey, you need a higher level of care. If we're in California, where are the California based clinicians that I can refer you to, because you need a higher level of care than just what I am providing, which is education, which is consulting, which is coaching. But us as therapists and counselors, we can't just take that head off. That is who we are, and that's where you get, the title production therapist. So I just wanted to give that full definition, especially for those that are watching and they're like, oh my gosh, this exists. What's a production therapist? What do you do? It's non-clinical, but that support is needed, because as Dr. TK said, psychoeducation is so important, and sometimes it's the education that someone gets and receives that gets them the help that they need in real time, or again, offset.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Thank you, Candace. Thank you for that.
That's good. That
Yeah.
wasn't that.
So listen, I wanted to one of the things that I really enjoy about being in these kind of conversations and doing what we do at the Production Wellness House and working with folks like you, Dr. TK, is that we really do get an opportunity to focus on some of the things that have not been ever considered at all in the past, which is really the mental mindset of the talent, of the creative. And, as a talent manager, I'm in a lot of these conversations. I have to deliver a lot of information that may be very, there are some wins. There are some great wins. And when you get those wins, it's, you know, and and likewise, when you get the learns, right? I try not to call them losses. I call them learns.
Yep, me
It's
too.
all mindset, right? When you get those learns, it's like, okay, let's rebound,
Yeah.
And I try to give it like I try to tell my clients, look, let's give it a 20-minute, depending on what it is, right? Let's make it, make it match the level of power, that of power that the source brings, right? So if it's really, really amazing, all right, give yourself about an hour to a day, living it, but then get back on that ground, right? Stay
Mhm.
grounded. Same thing on the opposite end,
Mhm.
right? There's this role that you were really up for. You done went through like 1,800 auditions, in person, chemistry reads, self tapes, redos. You'll do the whole gamut, and then you may not
Yeah.
get it. It might just go somewhere else, and it may not have anything to do with your talent whatsoever. But I also talk about, hey, look, even in that space, deal with it. Go through that space of grief, recognize it for what it is, put it down, and get back on that ground. So we're here to talk about those things, and I really want to make sure that it's clear for the creatives that are watching that this is something that you have to be intentional about. Dr. TK talked about making time to meet with your therapist, even if you're out of town and stuff like that. It's that important for you to look at yourself, your mindset, where you are, because there's no way for you to show up to be the best creative possible if you're not handling your
Yeah.
mindset, your mental well-being. And so I thank you so much we thank you
Yes.
for being a part of this
So
conversation,
much.
for being a part of
Appreciate
this
you.
this 4-part series to talk about this very important topic during the month of Mental Health Awareness Month. We want to make sure that we are taking these steps and we continue to grow and push this journey forward. And so thank you, thank you, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you, thank you, thank you,
I enjoyed
thank you so much.
it. And I'm like, I think that everything always happens
Mhm.
on purpose.
Oh,
Because
indeed.
when I
Yes.
had ran into y'all, like the host of the event thought I was gonna leave on the second day. I said, no, I'm here to engage with other therapists and
Oh,
social workers
Yeah, we love
as
that.
well. And then to my surprise, I
Yeah,
didn't
no.
get to
yes. And
stay.
that's why this conversation is so important because I just read Dr. Warren's comment and she said, I appreciate this talk because it highlights the skills we have as mental
Mhm.
health professionals to help people heal and transform outside of the traditional therapy space. And if you follow Dr. TK, you know she's gonna get you outside of the traditional therapist space and allow you to really nurture and hone in on all of your skills
Yes.
and knowing that our skills as mental health professionals are transferable,
Mhm.
right? They're transferable, and being able to know that across all industries, whatever wherever you are, whatever practice setting you're in, that you're there to help people, as Dr. Warren said, to heal, to transform. And I always say every set that I'm blessed to be on, and it's my hope that one day there is, a therapist on all sets when they, come on, is that heals our community because once they're well, once they're educated, it goes into their influence, it goes into their families, and it just trickles down. So I'm just so appreciative of the work that we all are doing collectively, and ensuring that people are well from the inside out. So thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
I love
TK.
you.
it. Thank y'all.
Dr. TK, make sure you guys are following Dr. TK, Candace Washington, Wink Woodall, and the Production Wellness House. We thank you for your time, and we hope that you can join us again next week, same
And
day,
Nice.
same
same
time. We're
time,
gonna have
9 p.m.
another great person that's gonna come on and talk on the same topic, and we're gonna continue this conversation, continue this journey, and continue this movement, as Nicole Baskin would say.
Yes.
All right. All right. We'll tap in with you guys next week. Thank you so much, Dr.
You're
TK. Take
welcome. Thank
care.
y'all. Bye. Have a good
All right
night.
now.
You
Bye.
too.